On November 14, 2025, beneath the black waters of the Caribbean Sea, the United States Navy operated one of its most silent but most lethal assets, USS Delawood, a $3.4 billion Virginia-class nuclear attack submarine carrying 134 sailors and more than 5,700 classified systems, was on a routine acoustic monitoring mission. Its objective was to investigate strange underwater vibrations reported by two civilian cargo ships drifting 41 nautical miles off the Venezuelan coast. The Venezuelan warship FVZ Mariscal 07, supported by its patrol counterpart Libertad 29, suddenly initiated a full anti-submarine strike, launching 4 heavyweight torpedoes and deploying 28 depth charges into the deep. In less than 60 seconds, more than 12,000 pounds of explosive force were rushing toward the U.S. submarine. Venezuelan commanders believed overwhelming shock and aggression would force the United States to retreat. But they were wrong. Washington responded by activating Operation Silent Verdict. Already tracking the engagement was the destroyer USS Preble, supported by 2 MH-60R Seahawks and a rapid response air wing of FA-18E Super Hornets, all converging with one purpose: neutralize the warship that dared to strike a U.S. submarine. Could the Delawood survive the underwater ambush? Or would Venezuela's torpedoes shatter America's billion-dollar war machine in the darkness below? Let's uncover the truth. At 3:12 a.m. on November 16, 2025, 41 nautical miles south of Aruba, the Caribbean looked calm enough to hide a war. No waves, no moonlight, just a vast sheet of black water stretching in every direction. Beneath it, at a depth of 164 meters, moved one of America's most advanced machines, the USS Delawood, a $3.4 billion Virginia-class submarine carrying 134 sailors and over 5,700 classified components designed to keep them alive. The mission that night was routine, at least on paper. 2 civilian cargo ships had reported severe engine tremors and unusual underwater noise. Delawood was sent to investigate. No weapons drawn, no political message. Simply a U.S. submarine operating in legal international waters, 41 nautical miles from the Venezuelan coast. But at sea, routine can turn into crisis in less than a minute. At 3:18 a.m., inside Venezuela's coastal command center at Puerto Cabo, a single low-frequency sonar return flickered across a dusty monitor. A faint acoustic line, weak, incomplete, and scientifically classified as non-identifiable. But fear does not follow science. Within 87 seconds, junior officers wrote a single word on their alert sheet: intrusion. No second scan, no verification, only assumption and political pressure. When Admiral Rafael M. Sordo entered the room at 3:20 a.m., the atmosphere shifted. Known for his hardline posture and responsible for 3 previous false alarm intercepts, he studied the fading sonar trace for less than 5 seconds. Then he issued an order that would push the Caribbean toward its darkest hour in a decade. Locate it, track it, neutralize it. His command staff froze. The contact was clearly outside Venezuelan waters. It posed no threat. But Sordo justified his order by citing a classified assessment claiming U.S. submarine presence near Venezuela had risen 92% in 6 months, a number later proven fabricated but accepted in the moment. At 3:24 a.m., 2 Venezuelan anti-submarine vessels, Mariscal 07 and Libertad 29, accelerated to intercept. Engines pushed past safety limits. Sonar arrays powered up. Depth charge racks unlocked. A hunt had begun. Not because the United States provoked it, but because someone misread a flicker of noise in the deep and far below. USS Delawood continued forward, quiet, steady, unaware that danger was already rising toward her hull. At 4:05 a.m., the ocean above USS Delawood remained quiet, but the water began to carry a new vibration, faint, rhythmic, metallic. Sonar operators recognized it instantly. Dual prop signatures closing fast, approaching from the northwest. 2 vessels, high speed, no scheduled traffic in that sector. Inside the control room, the lead sonar technician relayed the update calmly. Contact bears 331, range 9.4 nautical miles, speed increasing. The numbers told the truth long before intentions did. On the surface, the Venezuelan ships moved like predators tasting blood. FVZ Mariscal 07, a $620 million anti-submarine frigate equipped with twin 533mm torpedo tubes. FVZ Libertad 29, a $310 million patrol vessel loaded with 36 depth-charge canisters. Both ships pushed their engines to 31 knots, far above normal patrol speed, leaving trails of white wake across the Black Caribbean. At 4:08 a.m., USS Delawood followed international protocol. A coded underwater acoustic message, short, clear, unmistakable, was transmitted toward the approaching vessels. Venezuelan Navy vessels, this is USS Delawood. We are conducting lawful operations in international waters. No hostile intent. Silence came back. Not the natural silence of the sea, but the silence of someone choosing not to answer. By 4:11 a.m., the tension sharpened. Venezuelan sonar arrays locked into active mode, sending loud ping bursts that echoed through the deep. These pulses were not for navigation, they were for target acquisition. The ping intensity spiked from 120 dBd to 191 dB, a level used only when a navy is preparing to engage. In Delawood's control room, Commander Harlan Reed stood still, eyes on the cascading data. He had commanded submarines for 19 years, survived 2 collisions, and logged more than 3,000 hours underwater. Yet even he felt the shift. Something had changed. These were not search pings. They were hunting pings. The storm that formed in Chapter 1 was no longer distant. It was now closing in fast, deliberate, and unmistakably hostile. At 4:23 a.m., the first explosion did not come from a missile. It came from water pressure shifting. A warning nature gives seconds before man creates something worse. In Delawood's sonar room, a spike appeared on the display metallic rotation, accelerating torpedo screws, not 1, not 2, 4. FVZ Mariscal 07 had just launched 4 heavyweight Type 53 torpedoes, each carrying a 300 kilotons PBX 1110 explosive charge, enough to tear open a submarine hull in a single strike. Designed in China and modernized in 2023, they travel at 52 knots and home in on noise like a predator sensing blood. Commander Reed did not raise his voice. He simply said, "Battle stations, rig for silent running." At 4:24 a.m., Delawood dove from 174 meters to 192 meters in 19 seconds, tilting at a dangerous 22-degree angle. The lights dimmed to red. Every sailor held on to rails, screens, or prayers. Silence was now their only shield. But Venezuela did not rely on torpedoes alone. From above, Libertad 29 released 28 depth charges, spread in a deadly staircase pattern between 120 and 200 meters. Each charge packed the force of 700 pounds of TNT. The ocean around the American submarine transformed into a pressure cage. At 4:25 a.m., the first depth charge detonated. A thunderclap rolled through the hull. 113 dB inside the control room. Panels shook. 2 consoles flickered. A junior technician was thrown to the floor. Then came the second, then the third, then 6 more in rapid sequence. The explosions swallowed sound, light, and breath, compressing the steel around them. Delawood's anechoic tiles, 6th 300 panels designed to absorb sonar, shattered along the port side. A microfracture appeared near auxiliary compartment 3. Water began to seep in at 0.7 liters per second. At 4:26 a.m., the torpedoes closed to 1,900 meters, then 1,200, then 900. At that distance, even one hit would mean instant loss of the submarine and all 134 souls aboard. Reed made a decision only veteran commanders dare make. He ordered a full-power evasive maneuver, braking silent running to save the ship. The turbine screamed. Delawood turned 31 degrees starboard, releasing countermeasure canisters, streamers of metallic fibers and decoys saturating the water with false echoes. At 4:27 a.m., a torpedo swallowed the bait. Then another. 2 torpedoes detonated harmlessly in the decoy cloud, sending a shock wave that shoved the submarine sideways like a fist hitting a steel drum. At 4:28 a.m., 1 torpedo kept coming. Its homing beacon locked onto Delawood's thermal trail. Distance 700 meters, 500, 300. The crew held their breath. At 4:29 a.m., a final countermeasure activated an acoustic jammer Mark V, flooding the ocean with a 219 decibel blast of synthetic noise. The torpedo lost lock. It veered off and exploded in the darkness. Delawood had survived the first attack, but the battle was not over. The ocean was now a battlefield, and the United States had just been attacked without warning. At 5:02 a.m., 4,000 miles away from the blast zone, the Situation Room lit up with a stream of encrypted data beamed directly from USS Delawood. Thermal spikes, pressure shock waves, structural vibration graphs, a full 1.9 terabytes of sensor data compressed into a live feed. The screen told a story no briefing needed to explain. A U.S. nuclear-powered submarine had been attacked without warning. At the center of the table, Admiral Samuel Briggs, Chief of Naval Operations, leaned forward, a man who had served 41 years at sea, who had commanded under 3 wars, now stared at the unmistakable image of a 300-kilo torpedo bloom igniting less than 290 meters from an American hull. His voice was steady, cold, precise. Gentlemen, this was not an accident. This was an attack on a United States warship. President Donald Trump said nothing at first. He watched the slowed-down replay, the depth charge ladder exploding in sequence, the submarine tilting under pressure, the final torpedo veering away only by inches. On the margins of the feed, Delawood's internal log reported 24 structural tiles destroyed, 1 microfracture spreading 0.44 mm per minute, 2 sailors injured, 11 critical systems in degraded mode. Silence hung heavy. Then the President signed an emergency directive under Article 51 of the UN Charter. Operation Silent Verdict was activated. The first order deploy an immediate naval and aerial response, swift, overwhelming, but contained offshore to avoid escalation on land. At 5:16 a.m., 170 nautical miles east of Barbados, USS Preble, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer carrying 96 vertical launch tubes and a combat crew of 287, received the coded message. Its captain read the directive twice. Then he gave the only order that mattered. All hands to battle stations. Simultaneously, 2 MH-60R Seahawk helicopters lifted off, lowering active sonar arrays into the sea. Their job tracked the Venezuelan vessels before they could regroup. In Florida, the runway trembled. 2 FA-18E Super Hornets, each armed with 4 Harpoon Block 2+ missiles, and two 1,000-pound JDAM bombs roared into the sky. The combined payload, 18,400 pounds of precision firepower. Every radar, every drone, every satellite in the region locked onto one target, FVZ Mariscal 07, the ship that fired the torpedoes. The United States was not moving toward revenge. It was moving toward correction, delivered with the accuracy of a surgeon and the power of a nation that had just been struck in the dark. At 6:04 a.m., the Caribbean horizon was still dark when the first American response arrived. Not with explosions, but with sonar. Two MH-60R Seahawks descended to 200 feet, dipped their ALFS low-frequency sonar into the sea, and locked onto a moving target. The reading was unmistakable. FVZ Mariscal 07, the ship that launched the torpedoes. Range 28.7 nautical miles, speed 29 knots, heading west, fleeing for the coast, but it would not reach it. At 6:07 a.m., USS Preble armed its launch cells. 7 Harpoon Block 2+ missiles slid into firing position, guided by GPS inertial navigation and a radar seeker that could track a single steel plate from 70 miles away. The captain gave one calm order: fire. Flame erupted from the destroyer's deck. 3 harpoons tore across the black water at 537 Satitrim, each carrying a 488-pound warhead engineered to break a frigate's back. At 6:10 a.m., the first impact struck Mariscal 07 amidships, punching a hole the size of a truck into its port side. The second detonated near the engine compartment, igniting 42,000 liters of fuel. The third hit the forward magazine. A fireball shot 200 feet into the air. The ship lost power instantly. Its radar went silent. Its propellers stopped. The vessel listed 19 degrees to port and began to sink by the bow. At 6:11 a.m., Libertad 29 attempted to intervene. It did not get far. The 2 Super Hornets descended from 18,000 feet, invisible beneath cloud cover, until the moment they released 4 GBU-32 JDAMs, each containing 1,000 pounds of explosive force. 2 bombs tore through the deck. One severed the starboard shaft. The last detonated beneath the keel, lifting the ship out of the water before gravity pulled it back like a stone. At 6:16 a.m., Venezuela sent a frantic transmission. Cease fire, cease fire. No further hostile intent, but the battle was already over. The sea, moments earlier, a battlefield, returned to an eerie calm. Mariscal 07 slipped beneath the surface at 6:19 a.m., taking 23 sailors with it. Libertad 29 burned in place, immobilized, its crew abandoning ship into oil-stained waves. USS Delawood, damaged, bruised, but alive, rose closer to periscope depth, watching the sky glow with the last flashes of a fight it never sought. By 6:29 a.m., the Caribbean was silent again, not the peaceful silence of dawn, but the heavy silence that follows when a nation answers an attack with absolute precision. At 8:10 a.m., the White House Situation Room was no longer a place of discussion. It was a courtroom, and the evidence pouring in from the Caribbean was the indictment. Screens played synchronized footage. 1. 9 terabytes of Delawood sonar data, 4K infrared recordings from MH-60R Seahawks, satellite frames from USA 245 showing the precise location of impact points, digital logs proving torpedoes were launched at 34.2 nautical miles, far beyond any territorial claim. There was nothing to debate, nothing to interpret. The truth was mathematical, time-stamped, undeniable. At 8:14 a.m., Admiral Samuel Briggs addressed the National Security Council. His voice was firm, the tone of a man who had spent 4 decades navigating threats without blinking. This was not a misunderstanding. This was an armed attack on the United States Navy. A silence heavier than steel settled over the table. At 8:17 a.m., a legal advisor from the Pentagon placed a binder on the desk Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, highlighted and marked. The words were simple: the inherent right of individual or collective self-defense. Beside it lay a second report, a preliminary damage assessment listing the consequences of the Venezuelan attack: 24 structural tiles destroyed, one hull microfracture spreading 0.4 millimeter per minute, 11 systems degraded, 2 sailors injured, 1 in critical condition, $38 million in immediate repair costs, numbers that rarely lie. At 8:23 a.m., the Secretary of Defense displayed a forensic acoustic timeline. Venezuelan sonar switched to full active mode at 4:11:23. The first torpedo was launched at 4:23:14. The first depth charge detonated at 4:25:09. There was no U.S. provocation in the 12 minutes between. By 8:31 a.m., the meeting had only one conclusion: Venezuela violated international law, unclose maritime boundaries, and rules of engagement in open water. At 8:42 a.m., the State Department issued a global statement. The United States acted in self-defense. Venezuela fired first. In Congress, both parties echoed the same message. 31 senators called for an inquiry into Venezuela's procurement of Chinese-made torpedoes. 11 representatives demanded immediate sanctions. Defense committees prepared hearings and markets reacted. Oil futures spiked 11.9% in 1 hour. America was not merely angry. It was unified calmly, legally, overwhelmingly. By 9:02 a.m., one thing was clear. The underwater attack had moved from the realm of warfare into the realm of global accountability. At 10:45 a.m., Caracas appeared on television for the first time since the sinking of Mariscal 07. Their message was predictable and hollow. The United States violated our territorial waters, the spokesman declared, reading stiffly from a script. No Venezuelan vessel initiated hostilities. The claim lasted 38 minutes before the first contradiction surfaced. At 11:23 a.m., major international networks aired satellite images released by the U.S. frames, captured by USA 245, America's most advanced reconnaissance satellite. Each image carried a timestamp. Each image fixed Venezuela's warships at 34 nautical miles from shore. Each image showed the thermal bloom of torpedo launches. There was no intrusion. There was no provocation. There was only a sequence of hostile acts that could no longer be denied. At 11:31 a.m., the U.S. Navy released a second tranche of evidence, ALFS low-frequency sonar recordings from MH-60R Seahawks. The files were devastating. The data proved Venezuela activated full-power active sonar first. Venezuelan ships executed a closing vector formation. Torpedoes were launched before any U.S. response. Depth charges were deployed in a pre-planned pattern. Every detail was audible, visible, and verifiable. Caracas had no answer. At 11:40 a.m., inside the Venezuelan cabinet, a crisis erupted. Leaked reports later confirmed a shouting match between the defense minister and the chief of staff. The question was simple and dangerous: who gave the order? By noon, that question had spread to the streets. Families of the lost sailors gathered outside naval headquarters in La Guaira, holding handwritten signs. One message, filmed by a passerby, went viral across South America. "My son died 34 miles from home. Why within 4 hours?" The hashtag "Quien dio la orden," who gave the order, accumulated 6.4 million views. State television responded by broadcasting patriotic music and footage of calm seas, a tactic every Venezuelan recognized as panic disguised as confidence. At 12:02 p.m., Caracas issued a second statement. This time, the tone was defensive, almost pleading. "We are reviewing all operational data." The world had its answer. The government that once spoke with certainty was now hiding behind vagueness. The truth was no longer in Washington's hands. It was in the hands of physics, timestamps, sonar echoes, and images captured from space. No propaganda could erase them, and no statement could explain away a war they had started in silence. At 1:14 p.m., as Caracas struggled to explain itself, the rest of South America was already choosing sides. Brazil, the region's economic anchor, was first. Its foreign ministry released a short, unusually blunt statement. The evidence presented by the United States is credible and concerning. Within 20 minutes, Chile and Colombia issued similar remarks. 3 nations, 3 separate governments, one message. Venezuela stood alone. At 1:37 p.m., the Organization of American States convened an emergency session in Washington. For the first time in 14 years, every seat was filled. Screens projected the same sequence of proof: USA-245 satellite frames, MH-60R sonar signatures, GPS metadata, torpedo plume triangulation coordinates showing Venezuela fired at 34.2 nautical miles. The numbers were shocking even to military observers. 17 OAS nations voted to formally condemn Venezuela's actions. Only 2 opposed. 4 abstained. The result hit Caracas harder than any Harpoon missile. At 1:58 p.m., global markets felt the tremor. Crude oil prices jumped 18.6% in a single trading cycle. Shipping insurers classified waters within 90 nautical miles of Venezuela as elevated risk, triggering premium increases of up to 240%. Cargo routes shifted overnight, rerouting hundreds of miles east, bypassing Venezuelan ports entirely. This was not economics. This was isolation swift, suffocating, and measurable. At 2:12 p.m., facing mounting pressure, Cuba and Nicaragua attempted to defend their ally, accusing the United States of staging a provocation. Washington responded not with speeches, but with data. A Pentagon briefing presented 9 separate sensor tracks, including radar sweeps from an E-2D Hawkeye and infrared readings from a geostationary satellite. The conclusion was identical across all systems. Venezuela fired first. Venezuela targeted a U.S. submarine. Venezuela acted alone. The room fell silent. At 2:44 p.m., even neutral nations began to distance themselves. Argentina expressed grave concern. Peru urged full accountability. Bolivia called for an immediate investigation. The hemisphere was no longer split. It was repositioning. By 3:02 p.m., the verdict of an entire continent was clear. Venezuela had not just attacked a U.S. submarine, it had attacked the stability of the region, and in the Caribbean, the water above the wreck of Mariscal 07 shimmered in the sun, carrying the weight of a mistake now judged not by the United States alone, but by the world. At 6:14 p.m., as the sun lowered over the Caribbean, the waves above the wreck of Mariscal 07 shimmered like broken glass. Oil drifted across the surface in thin black veins, silent reminders of a decision made in the dark and paid for in daylight. In Washington, the Pentagon released its formal assessment. The numbers spoke louder than any accusation. 4 torpedoes fired, 28 depth charges deployed, 33 Venezuelan sailors lost, 2 U.S. sailors injured, $38 million in U.S. damage, 1 submarine nearly destroyed. Tensions felt across 17 nations. The document concluded with a single sentence: underwater warfare has no warning shots. At 6:27 p.m. at the State Department, Diplomats briefed allies on the broader danger. The world had entered an era where a single misread sonar ping a flicker, a shadow. A digital echo could trigger a crisis capable of destabilizing entire regions. And this time, it nearly had. At 6:41 p.m., analysts pointed to a rising pattern since 2020. Global investment in submarine fleets and underwater drones had increased by 61%. More weapons, more sensors, more chances for the next mistake. America's position was firm. Restraint is strength. Precision is deterrence. But no nation can allow an attack on its people to go unanswered. At 7:00 p.m., night returned to the Caribbean. The last bubbles from Mariscal 07 rose to the surface and disappeared. The waves closed over the wreck as if sealing a chapter. Yet the lesson remained. In the silence below, wars do not announce themselves, and civilization survives only when nations respond with discipline, not rage. Because underwater, the line between peace and catastrophe is thinner than the hull of a submarine.